Everyday witches emerge from the shadows of secrecy. Broom closets are flinging open and witches are taking flight. Whether you are hiding in your cozy closet or flying with pride, stay for a spell as Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon and her guests share magical moments, stir the cauldron, and debunk misinformation and misconceptions about paganism, witches, and our wonderful world of magic.
On today's episode, we have another special guest. Let's welcome Bear.
Hello, how you doing?
Bear, you are a witch. Is that correct?
Yes.
What I have experienced from people who know little about the pagan community is that they often call witches by other names. What have people called you other than a witch?
Well, I've been known as a warlock, which fascinates the heck out of me that, that came about in the 1950s through Hollywood. And anybody who's not in the witch community or Wicca will automatically call you a warlock. And I tell them, no, I'm a witch. I'm a male witch, and we are all the same.
Because there's no gender, correct?
No, it's supposed to be very gender neutral.
Now, have you been a witch all your life?
Yes, I'm a hereditary witch. My mother was a witch, so I grew up with her and her friends, her covenant. And then I also had three grandmothers that came to save me on Sundays and took me to church on Sundays. So I was bombarded with both the Wicca beliefs and then also the Christian beliefs.
Now, all three grandmothers were Christian?
Yes. Actually, they were of different faiths. One grandmother was Catholic, one was Baptist, and the other one was Pentecostal. So, depending on who got there first on Sundays or who was feeling good to come get me, and then I went to, the three different churches up until I was about 16 years old.
Did that confuse you? Here you had three grandmothers of three different Christian faiths, and then you had a mother who was a witch.
Yes, very much. It made me question a lot of things and try and put things into perspectives. The biggest thing was the three religious Christians. Catholics are far removed from Baptists, and Pentecostals are their own little group. So, even that was confusing on top of everything else.
So why do you think they were so eager to take you to church? Each one wanted you to join their church, correct?
Yes, I have been saved 3 times. I have been baptized 7 times. They all wanted to make sure that I had a place in heaven. So if you're getting saved or being baptized is the way to get into heaven, I got a good shot at getting there. I'm hoping that it's on my own merit and my own being good here. They wanted to make sure that I had a place.
A place in heaven?
A place in heaven, yes.
So you probably won't go to hell because you've been saved.
No, I'm not going to go to hell. I don't believe in hell. I actually don't believe there's a heaven. I believe that there's an eternal energy in this universe that keeps using us over and over and over. I think a lot of it is made up, fake. The reason why I follow the Wicca is because it does follow Mother Earth. It is part of this universe that makes us all up. There's a lot of strange things that happens that you can't put into one particular place. People dismiss things that they don't understand. And I want to know about it. I want to find out about more about it as we go. I don't want to dismiss anything that happens to me, whether it's magical or it's good or bad.
With a mother who was a witch, you said that you are a hereditary witch. Did you think that most children were like you and had a mother who was a witch?
No, most kids weren't like me. A lot of my friends knew about my mother, knew about me. They knew I was an empath. They would seek us out if they needed something, like was not feeling good or was worried about something that was happening to them, or they were looking for to change their luck, things like that. I found that was fascinating that they would seek you out. Same as what adults do now. If you tell them you're a witch or you say something about it, they don't understand it, but then as soon as they have a problem or they don't feel good or something's going on, then they'll come seek you out. Hey man, I have this problem and this has appeared in my life. Tell me about it. Tell me why this is happening. And I try and explain it to them, the best I can with what I know or what I feel like it is. It may not be the right answer, but it's the answer I can give them.
So, in other words, they believe that you're a witch, so they come to you for help when they need it, correct?
Yes. Sometimes things happen or something magical will happen and they'll go, "Wow, what was that?" And I'll tell them, "Well, it's because I'm a witch." And I introduce the idea to them sometimes. Sometimes I don't. People that are very close-minded, I don't tell them I'm a witch. Ultimately, it comes out. Ultimately, people find out about it because I try to live a, I guess, a magical life. I also try to live, maybe it's a non-Christian life. People say God bless you. People say, whenever they say God bless you, I say blessed be. Whenever they say Merry Christmas, I say Happy Yule. And then they start to question, well, why aren't you giving me back what I'm giving you? And I'm like, I am, but I'm giving it to you in a different form. I'm giving it into a different religion or spiritual. And they'll always ask me, are you spiritual? Yes, I feel I'm very spiritual. I believe there is an entity that is all encompassing and all powerful. I don't think he's Christian God by any means, but I think that, like I said, we're all in this cauldron together. It's easier for me to understand things that happen to me in this arena.
For the most part, would you say that you're out of the broom closet?
I am out of the broom closet, but I'm very selective with who I tell right away that I am a witch. Some people don't believe me, like I said before, and then some people do, and we have conversations. I like to have conversations with people rather than having a argument or have someone yell at me. Hey, man, you're going to burn in hell. When you tell me I'm going to burn in hell, then then I try to have a intellectual conversation, but sometimes it doesn't go that way. People that are very stubborn in their religion are not going to give you any kind of leeway whatsoever. But when I show them that a lot of their religion is pagan beliefs and pagan traditions, sometimes they get upset, sometimes they accept it, and then we have a conversation.
So, has anybody told you that you're going to burn in hell because you don't have the same beliefs that they do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a guy at work that in the beginning believed that I was going to burn in hell. He was worried about my soul. Once he found out I was saved, once he found out I had been baptized, then he was a little easier with it. Then he told me I was confused. When I told him I wasn't confused, that I knew exactly what I was doing, he's like, "You're just misguided." So we went from I was going to burn in hell to I'm confused and now I'm misguided. So, but he turns to my wife and asks my wife to make a potion for him because he's not feeling good. Hey, can your witchy wife go make this for me? Tell me he'll call her and say, hey, my shoulder's hurting. What can I do? And, she's giving him remedies and things for him to do. So he needs us. He needs that part taken care of. It may not be his spiritual side, but it was his physical side that he realized, hey, you're a healer. You can take care of these things for me. Okay, I accept that you're a witch for this moment.
It's interesting how he thinks that you're misguided, but he's never really considered that the possibility is that he could be misguided. Any of us could be misguided. So he's in the mindset that his path is the correct path.
Right. Well, you don't find out whether you were on the right path or not until after you kick the bucket, or no one gets out of this alive, and we all find out the truth, I'm hoping I got my bases covered. If my grandmothers were right all my life, then I hope God understands that I took a path to ease my spiritual soul, not somebody else's, not a group of people, but my own spiritual soul. And I try to be a guide. I try to be a mentor to people that want to understand something different. If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't.
Now, do you believe as a witch that you may have special powers, special intuition, whatever you may call it, special magic?
I'm an empath. I can feel people. I can understand how, what somebody is. I know what people are thinking. I can see things that happen in the future that's going to come to pass. Sometimes I get premonitions. I can feel ghosts. If there's a ghost in an area or somewhere there's a ghost, I'm going to know that they're there. They're going to come tap me, they're going to touch me, they're going to push me and let me know that they're there. And they're going to give signs that they're going to give me visions or things that I can see or know that they exist. And I have always been that way all my life with people. If somebody's in pain, when I first come up to them, I'll feel pain. I'll feel pain in certain areas. I'll feel pain in my legs. I'll feel pain in my back, and I'll know that they're uncomfortable. And I'll just ask them questions, in conversation and kind of find out some things that's going on. I think that people keep ghosts with them. They're so hurt and so distraught that that person left their life that they keep that residue. They keep that person there with them. If they let them go, then that ghost doesn't exist anymore. People keep that ghost, that energy that I want to call it, with them. I've had lots of examples.
Would you say that you see and feel ghosts? How do you know they're there?
I don't see. I've seen a couple of ghosts, but they were passing by, or they. I had a lady. I was working for T-Mobile. I had a lady that I was closing the store. I had turned out all the lights. I was getting ready to leave. I was just going up to the door to lock it, and she came bouncing in trying to get her phone fixed. And so I let her in, and she just pleaded, "Please fix my phone." And I said, "Okay, fine." So we went to the desk, and I'm standing there, and she's on the other side of the desk, and I can feel a presence. I didn't say anything, I didn't look at her, but I could feel a presence. And then all of a sudden, I get pushed from behind, and then I could feel a small child running around the store like an unattended kid does. And I looked around the store, I looked at her, and I kind of had a look of dismay on my face. And she says, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm going to ask you a question, and please don't think I'm crazy." I asked her, I said, "Did you have a son or a child pass away recently?" And she said, "Yes, my son, he's been gone for about 3 months." And I said, "Okay." And then she kind of looked at me and she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because he's here. He's here with you." She goes, "He's always with me." She says, "You know he's here?" And I'm like, "Yes, I know he's here. Just tell him to quit pushing me. I'm trying to fix your phone." She started crying. I said, "I didn't mean to make you cry. I didn't want you to cry. He just is all over the place." And she said that's the way he was when he was alive. She couldn't control him. She couldn't hang on to him. He would just go crazy in the stores. And I'm like, "Well, as a spirit, he's going crazy in here." She actually turned and snapped her finger, and it calmed down. And then I got her phone fixed, and then she told me thank you because she thought she was going crazy, that she could feel it. And I said, "No, he hasn't left you." And she left the store. I locked the store. Those are things that happened to me that you asked me to put that into a Christian context. I can't do that. I can't fathom where that belongs. I accept it for what it is, and I go on. I feel like there's a lot out there that hasn't even been touched, that we that people know.
You told me that you're selective on letting people know that you're a witch. And you told me a story about the best man in your wedding, who was your neighbor. Can you tell us that story about how he found out you were a witch?
Well, I had met my wife. We were dating and living together basically. Dan, he is Romanian. He is a very strong Christian. He has great Christian values, and I never really discussed with him about me being a witch. I had been out of the witch community for maybe 5 or 6 years. The person I was dating before did not want me to be a witch whatsoever, not to talk about it, not to say anything about it. And I felt like a piece of me was being squashed. So our relationship ended. I met Amy, which is my wife now. I told her, I said, I want to get back into the witch community, especially in San Antonio. I had met a couple of people. I actually went down and had breakfast with them to kind of see if they were crazy or not. Some people take it and really go to extremes with it, and some people don't. So, and I guess that's like in any religion, some people are extremists. You can't, those are people that you really can't talk to or have conversations with. But I had met two very beautiful ladies. I had invited them to dinner. I had asked them to come up. They had said that they had several friends that wanted to come. They wanted to come meet Amy. I talked about Amy. So they came to my house, and I had set up a big tent, had a big table. We were going to have a feast. I had ska music playing. I had my gargoyles out. They showed up in their cars and they started parking, and they got out with the pointy hats and the brooms and the black dress and everything else. And he was looking out the window, and all of a sudden he saw all these women coming out of their cars, and he freaked out. And he got him out on his front porch and he started yelling, "What the hell's going on out here?" And I told Amy, I said, "Receive the ladies, let me go talk to Dan," because I didn't want Dan to come and disturb the group. And he was out there just going on crazy. And I walked over to him and I said, "Dan, you need to stop." And he's like, "Who are all those people? They look like witches." And I go, "They are." And he's like, "Well, what are witches doing here?" And I said, "They've come to have dinner with me and to be with me. They are my friends." And he goes, "Are you a witch?" And I'm like, "I am." And he lost it. He got really upset. And I kept trying to tell him, "Dan, I'm no different than I was yesterday, than I am today. You just found out another facet about me." And his wife came out on the porch and started yelling at him to come back in the house and stop being nosy and stop yelling at me, because she loved me and Amy and wanted him to calm down. So he went back in the house. He was calm. We had our ritual. This was like right at the end of summer, so it wasn't even Halloween. I couldn't blame it on Halloween that we were having a party, you know. So the next morning, it was really funny. He was on his front porch out yelling at me at my house, and I came outside and "What do you want?" He goes, "Are you going to church with me? It's Sunday." And I'm like, "Dan, you don't even go to church." He goes, "Well, it doesn't matter." He says, "We need to go to church." And I'm like, "Jan, I don't want to go to church." He's like, "Well, we need to talk about this." And I said, "Okay." I said, "You are my very best friend. I love you dearly. You need to accept this, or you don't need to accept it. You just need to understand it." And we went back and forth for a couple hours standing out there. For some reason, he just accepted it and he was okay with it. So when I got married, I was getting married in a Beltane festival. I was dressing up like the Green Man. Amy was dressing up like the May Queen. We were gonna have a full marriage. That's when we were getting married. You know, I wrote the vows to it and everything else, and I went over next door and I asked Dan to be my best man, and I explained to him what was gonna happen. He was okay with it. He went and bought a monk's outfit. He had to be a monk. You know, "I'm gonna come here. I'm gonna be a monk." And I'm like, I'm happy with that. If you come, I'll be tickled pink. And he dressed up like a monk. He gave Amy away in the middle of the festival. He stayed there most of the evening. He had a really good time. One of my most favorite pictures is him and myself hugging I'm in full getup of Green Man, and he's dressed like a monk.
So now he's totally cool with you being a witch?
Yes. Yeah, he actually called Amy the other day and said he'd started a new job and his shoulder was hurting and wanted to know what he could put on it and what he could take, what potions. Her and Vicky talk about the potions. So Vicky has some of Amy's potions. So Amy was telling her what to give him and what to take and what to rub on his shoulder and stuff like that. Even though I don't live near him anymore, we still stay really close together. Probably text each other every day and talk about crazy stuff.
Going back to your mom being a witch, she must have taught you lots of things growing up. Did you think that you had the coolest mom ever? Because I didn't have a mom who was a witch. And I just imagined that it would have been really cool if she had been.
It was really cool her being a witch. It was also emotionally crazy. My mom had a lot of emotional problems and a lot of problems that I, as a child, tried to sort out for her, which sometimes I think was I didn't need to be her psychiatrist. I needed to be her son. It was really cool, and a lot of the kids, like I said, were a little scared. Thought maybe mom would eat them or something. It was funny because you would see fairy tales, and then they would ask you if that was true. I'm like, I just read the same fairy tale you just did. So it was interesting. They would always take me to church, and then my grandmothers would tell, I guess, counselors or ministers what my life was at home. And so then they were always trying to counsel me into a Christian life, or, hey, don't take that, don't listen to it. It's the work of the devil type of thing. And I'm like, well, we sit out under the moon and we chant, we do rituals and make moon water and things like that. How can that be the work of the devil?
And you enjoy doing that, being out in nature and
You're out in the woods as a 12-year-old with 13 women that are dancing under the moon. Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun. you know, uh,
did you have fun at church with your three grandmothers? They're all three different denominations of the Christian faith. Did you have fun going to church with them?
I had fun going to church with them. My grandmother, who was Assembly of God, they spoke in tongues and got really into the Holy Spirit, and I had a problem with that. I had a lot, and I actually talked to my grandmother about it, and she just told me it's because of my mother, the reason why I couldn't do it. I could never speak in tongues. I could never get the Holy Spirit or and I tried. I tried really hard. I tried to be a part of it. I got to thinking one day, I'm faking. I'm faking all of this. And then I got to thinking, how many people in this church are faking? And then I started questioning, what I was being bombarded with. I only met one person in my entire life that he was a pastor. He was an older pastor. He had been, he was getting ready to retire when I knew him. He's the one who first baptized me. He actually baptized me in the River Jordan. The river where we lived was named Jordan. He took me down to the river and walked me out into it. I was 10 years old and baptized me what I thought right, like it should have been. And I thought that was the greatest thing. And then when he retired, and then I slipped into this entire people that were money oriented, they were church oriented, they changed that church dramatically. And with that change, I was asked to leave, and I did. I couldn't stay there any longer.
Why were you asked to leave?
At the time, I was working as a orderly in a hospital, and I was making $1.75 an hour back then. I had a house, I had a baby coming. I was not going to pay tithes to the church. And they came and talked to me and said if I couldn't pay 10% to the church, then I could no longer be a member of the church. And I said, at this time in my life, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. I can't afford to give you $1. And instead of saying it's okay because we don't build this church on money, they told me, well, we're going to have to ask you to leave. And I thought, not a problem. I didn't really want to be here in the first place. So I walked away from that, and I was glad my grandmother was gone and didn't get to see or hear that. That made me realize, okay, here's another part of it. What are you about God and helping people and doing things, or is it you want to build a bigger church and you want to have bigger parking lot and you want to have a sound system? That's what they were about. That's what it turned into.
Now, in these three churches that you attended, did they ever tell you that you would burn in hell or you somehow would be influenced by the devil if you practiced the witchcraft like your mother?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And my mother was the spawn of Satan, daughter of Satan. Sometimes my dad thought that, but that was the thing, was everything that she did was the work of the devil, to stay away from it, and that it would corrupt me, and it would make me burn in hell. It made me a more kinder person. It made me a more gentle person. I had a lot of anger issues, a lot of confusion, you know.
Now, do you believe in Satan and the devil? Do you believe in burning in hell?
No, I believe that we're given free will, and the free will is you get to choose. You are a product of your environment. You get to grow up in this environment, and then you get to choose whether you continue that into your life. You can throw it away. I had a very strict, very unloving stepfather, and I chose not to be him. I went out of my way not to be that person. My two brothers are splitting images of him. They walk and talk just like him. I spent my time trying to not be like that. I took it as an example of what I did not want to be. I wanted to be more like my mother. I wanted to be close to nature. I took measures to do that. And I still do that. I still think of my mother. I still think of things that whenever I talk to people, I try and find the non-violent, non-evasive answers.
You mentioned that you have brothers. Did they follow the traditions that your mother taught you?
No, my little brother Gary, who dearly loves me, while he was still alive, we didn't talk about witchcraft. We didn't talk about anything. It was taboo to him. And he wasn't a big Christian, but witchcraft was nothing he wanted to mess with, nothing he wanted to be a part of. He felt it was the work of the devil, and he told his wife that I didn't like Christmas, that he didn't want to do Christmas around me because I didn't want Christmas. I love Christmas. I love having a tree. All the pagan traditions that are in Christmas are why we do Christmas. It's why it's there. He would tell me Merry Christmas, and I'd tell him, Happy Yule, and he'd get mad at me. Stop that. Just tell me Merry Christmas. It's like, okay, fine. My father hated that my mother did this, but he accepted that that's who she was, and then that was a part of her. But my two brothers are the same way. Nothing that they will never admit that that's what mom was. In the Celtic faith, they believe that when someone passes over the rainbow bridge, you start seeing feathers, and feathers come from all kinds of places. When my brother passed away, all of a sudden I was finding feathers everywhere, and it was kind of freaking me out, and they were different kinds of feathers, and crow feathers and robin feathers and everything else. And one day, the way my boss found out I was a witch was we were sitting at a job site having lunch, eating pizza, drinking sodas on our lunch hour. He had bought pizza for everyone. I'm sitting there just talking to everyone, and then a feather comes floating down between my legs and lands on the ground between my feet. I didn't say anything. I put my pizza down and I picked up the feather and I walked to my truck and I started to cry. I couldn't hold back the emotion. I guess I had stopped trying to think about my brother passing, and then here he was trying to remind me, "Hey, I'm in a good place. I'm in a place. I need to keep reminding you I'm in a good place." So I couldn't go back to work. And he came over to the truck and he's like, "You need to come back to work." And I'm like, "I can't. I can't come back to work." And he's like, "Why?" And we're standing out there having a conversation. And I finally just broke down and told him why. This is why I can't do it. This is why I just found this feather. I have this feather in my hand. I can't deal with working today. So he put me in his car. He took me back to the warehouse and he took me to my car. And we walked along the way and we're talking about it. And he stopped and he says, whether you know it or not, I understand a lot of this stuff. And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, my wife's a witch, and she's a practicing witch."
That's so
And I'm
cool.
I just freaked out. I'm like, "Wow." And he goes, "And I didn't know you were a witch." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't wear it as a badge, And he kind of laughed. And I said, "So they had my brother cremated. They waited a little bit till after winter was over with, and we went to bury him with my mother. And I wanted to put a feather, that feather, with him. And his wife agreed that I could do that. Not really say anything witchy or because my brother wouldn't appreciate it." I'm like, "My brother's not here, and she's like, "Okay." And she let me put the feather in the urn with him. And I felt like that was a part of saying, "Hey, goodbye. I'll see you when I see you." That helped my soul a little bit of dealing with the grief of my brother going. My brother's family they know I'm a witch. They don't want me to do anything that's witchy. They don't want me to talk about being a witch, but they all know it. They all accept it. And that's how we function together as a family.
You talked about the feather being a sign of someone passing. Have you had any other signs of someone passing and that they were present?
So my brother's mother-in-law had adopted myself, and especially after my brother died, she kind of got real close to me. She told me that I could call her mom, which I did. We got close, but she very Christian, very value driven, but a very strong and self opinionated woman. We never had any conversations about it or anything like that. When she passed away, she got COVID and couldn't handle it and went ahead and she passed on. They asked me to come to the funeral and they asked me to keep quiet, not to say anything, not to be witchy, not to dress witchy, not to bring any witch stuff to the family. Because there was a old guard family here. There was people that wouldn't understand, as I was told, and I was told to behave. I said, "Not a problem. I will behave. I won't do anything that would embarrass you or upset you." And this was coming from my sister-in-law, and I said, "I just want to be there." And they said, "Okay, fine." So Amy and I went. When they put the mother in the ground, the pastor said a few words over her and everything else. And then they all formed a big circle around the grave site. This is just winter's just getting over in Missouri. It's still ice on the ground. There's frost in the mornings. It's cold. You're in a jacket, gloves, and a hat. We're standing out there, and Amy and I stood back away from the family. I didn't want to be in the inner circle, because that's not my place. And we're standing back away from it, maybe 15, 20 feet. Everyone's standing there kind of looking at the flowers and everything else. And then out of nowhere, this big monarch orange and black butterfly comes floating in. Now, this is not the season for butterflies. All of a sudden, this butterfly comes in, lands on her headstone, then goes to her flowers, and it sits there for a moment. Everybody's looking at this butterfly. Then it gets up and it floats around the entire circle like it went to each person inside the circle, like all the way around the circle, went one time around. And then it came around and it lifted up over them and came back to me and Amy and it floated around us 3 times. And I held out my hand like I thought it would land in my hand, and if it would have, it probably would have freaked me out. But it just floated over my hand and then it floated back into the woods, and we never saw it again. Everybody just stood there. I mean, the whole group turned and just looked at me, and I'm like, "What?" you know. And when we're walking to the car, everybody's coming up to me and going, "Is that a sign? Was that an omen?" And I was telling them, "Yeah, that's Grandma telling you she's okay. She sent you a sign." And they're like, "Okay, but why did it float around you?" And I'm like, "Well, Mom loved me, and maybe she was saying that she accepted, that she knows where she is and she's happy, and that's the end of it." So everybody was just like, now I get little text messages, "Hey, this happened. Is this a witchy moment? Is this a magical moment?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, that's a magical moment." So they're kind of like seeing a little more magic in their lives than they ever saw before. We looked that butterfly up, and that butterfly, we could never find that pattern. We couldn't find it. Wasn't a monarch. It wasn't what I thought it was, and Amy and I are poring over trying to find that particular butterfly, and never could find it. Never could find the patterns. Never could find that it's not indigenous to Missouri, which was very magical to me. It didn't belong there.
It sounds like it was a magical moment.
It was. It did not belong there, and that was a very magical moment. So where do you take that? How do you in your mind reason that out? Where do you set that in your experience and go, wow? And you are right, like you said, it was a very magical moment, and that I accept.
Well, it sounds like your family has pretty much accepted that you're a witch if they're coming to you and needing reassurance about the butterfly and what that means.
Yeah, like my son, he had me come and marry him. I am an ordained minister. So part of his marriage was he wanted me to get married. He introduced me to his fiance as, "This is my dad, the witch." That's how he introduced me. And I'm like, I'm laughing. And she goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." Well, she's from Chile. She's around all kinds of magic. And her and I have had some of the greatest conversations about magic and her grandmother and the things that she's seen and the things that she knows. It was very awesome to be able to officiate their wedding, be a part of that. And it's kind of like his mother. His mother walks up to me and she goes, "You're holding a Bible." And I'm like, "Yes." She goes, "It didn't burn your hands?" And I'm like, "No, it hasn't burned my hands." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I have two witch books and I have a Bible sitting next to both of those witch books." And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "And my grandmother used to tell me that the Bibles were going to set the witch book on fire. Every time she came to my house, she would take the Bible out and move it somewhere else on my bookshelf." I'm like, "Grandma, no, it belongs right there." And she goes, "No, it does not." She would always tell me if my house ever burnt down, it's because the Bible caught the witch books on fire.
Well, these are really cool stories.
Yeah, well,
Everybody accepts that Bear is a witch.
pretty much, yes. I think they sometimes question it, and then they find out I'm true. I'm true to my word. I'm true to what I am and what I experience and what I see. And I think that they accept it much easier because of the gentleness I portray to them. I'm not going to ever fight with you. If you're going to come and fight with me and tell me I'm going to burn in hell, I'm going to give you reasons I'm not. Then we're going to have some kind of conversation. If it turns into a shouting match, I'll just walk away from it because you're closed minded and you're not going to
Yeah.
accept anything I say, so it doesn't matter.
Well, it's been really nice talking to you, Bear, the hereditary witch. And now we know that you're not a warlock.
Yeah, it's been fun getting some of this out of my system, telling stories. I have lots of stories. Yeah, I'm not a warlock, never have been a warlock. I've never caused any battles or anything like that. I always think a warlock is somebody that's going into battle, and that's not me. I'm just a witch, just me experiencing this life, trying to be as magical as possible.
Yes, and your magic shines.
Thank you.
thank you for joining us for Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon. Have a burning question or have a topic you'd love Theodora and her guests to discuss on the show? Contact her through Instagram at Theodora Pendragon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And help us spread the word by leaving us a rating and review and sharing it with your friends. See you next time, and may your magic always shine.